Hello, DEVC 206 classmates. I'm Imari Vergara, and I will be reporting on Module 15, Part 5, which covers the guidelines in producing radio plugs or spots. So here in this video, I will be discussing some important considerations to make when you're making your own radio plugs or spots. But first things first, let's have a quick recap on what a radio plug is. According to Pereo Oliver and Muela Molina, a radio spot or plug is a form of pre-recorded advertising that has the highest presence in the said medium. Lustria, Tabing, and Osalia also described it as effective conveyors of quick messages as they comprise short, catchy messages and ranges only between 15 to 60 seconds. It can also be aired during commercial breaks or at any point outside the actual radio programs in order to separate itself from the discussion points of the programs. All of this said, radio plugs or spots are brief, repeatable, and in no way related to the programming it is included in, so that its contents are transferable to any point of broadcast. Quoting Perona Paez. Now, what would be some considerations to make when producing a radio plug or spot? Here are some that I have gathered from the Module 15, Part 5, from Lustria, Tabing, and Osalia, as well as the production guide that was published by farmradio.ph. First, you have to define what the message is. Identify the main and secondary messages that you want your listeners to remember and to keep your message as short, catchy, and concise as possible. Remember, you only have a maximum of 60 seconds to get your message across, so simple is best. Determining your target audience is also an important factor when producing plugs or spots. You have to communicate the message in a way that they can relate to. For instance, producing a radio plug on how to register as a first-time voter will cater to youths and naturalized citizens. Considering that it will entail step-by-step instructions, you must list down that seemingly tedious process in a way that does not overwhelm or discourage them from taking part in the elections, which is actually a very important event. So next, radio plug producers and scriptwriters must also have a clear structure in mind. A good radio spot can be clearly divided into the beginning, the middle, and the ending. The beginning introduces the characters, the setting, and the challenge. And then the impacts of this challenge will be highlighted in the middle part, along with possible solutions to resolve them. And lastly, the ending presents the resolution of the problem as well as suggestions to prevent it from happening again. The third factor to consider is the use of active words. Active voice is preferred as it is often showing the subject doing the action rather than simply receiving it as implied in passive voice. Using active voice also is an effective way to communicate in radio plugs or spots, as sentences usually flow naturally, making it easily understandable by your audience. And sometimes, if you can remember, active voice is often preferred also when writing scripts, especially for news. So this also applies in making radio plugs. The only difference is that radio plugs or spots are often features and advertorial in nature, while news is more on informative and as a matter of fact kind of story. And last, we have to make the radio plug appealing. It has to generate appeal in order for our audiences to be interested and to have recall among listeners. Remember that plugs are one of the forms of radio advertising, hence they should be able to do those things. So, how do we achieve the appeal factor when making radio plugs or spots? First is attention getters. As the name suggests, can hook your listeners for more. It can be a startling revelation, a striking information, intriguing statement, highly dramatic point, stimulating dialogue or discussion, lively voice, odd fact, endorsement by a famous personality, human interest report, a pun, or a sound effect. Next is, avoid using awkward dialogues, petty plots, and trivial scenes, as these are boring stuff to your audience. It could also confuse them, especially when it is disjunct from the main message of your blog. If you cannot transition well, then there would be a disconnect between that whatever you used to your message. So, in that sense, you really have to be really careful not to use awkward dialogues, petty plots, and trivial scenes. And again, you only have a few seconds to impart whatever it is that you want your audience to remember, so just make that count. Another way to make your plugs appealing is the use of lively pacing, which also engages your audience to listen for more. This can be achieved by the use of snappy delivery and quick progression of ideas. Next, focus on one dominant message only. You will only have to focus on one message instead of cramming all that information within 60 seconds. That would be too much. That would be information overload. You will only confuse your listeners if you keep floundering between different ideas. And then, examine the spot for the unintended and latent dysfunctions or hidden messages. We do not want our listeners to be panicked or misinformed. Hence, we have to be mindful of how we should phrase our messages. And as it is a form of radio advertisement, repeating your plug several times every day is also a good tactic for visibility and recall. Make sure to play them as often as needed throughout the broadcast day. Using strong endings like a punctuating statement, thought-provoking question, strong declaration, pleasant or amusing repartee, comical note, resolution of the conflict, open but provocative ending, and a clear reminder can also elicit recall and action among your intended audience. Action is very important, especially when we're dealing with DevCom or development communication. Just be careful not to do it excessively so as to cause sensationalism or misdirection of message. Creating a tagline is also a strategy to make your message stick to the listeners. Make it creative, but also short and direct to the point. And of course, it has to be related to what the overall message of your plug is. And last, you have to refine your plug's format based on practical considerations. These include, but are not limited to, the most effective way to deliver your message, logistical and budgetary requirements, manpower, and feedback from reviews conducted prior to broadcast. This is why it's very important to have a listening party first or a review party first before you air whatever it is that you produce. And then, I would also like you to listen to some radio plugs that I have with me, and let us see how we can review them based on the guidelines that I have presented. So the first plug is titled Kamsamnida, which promoted the Padalibreng Bakasyon promo of Smart Padala and was aired in nationwide radio stations sometime between 2019 and 2020. So, let's listen to this.
Jose, magsa-smart padala para kay nanay.
Oh, Joy! Annyeonghaseyo!
Anyong? Ha? Anong meron?
Feel na feel mo na ang pangarap na bakasyon ng pamilya sa Smart Padala Padalibreng Bakasyon Raffle Promo. Sa padalang 500 pesos, may chance ka nang manalo ng all-expense-paid trip para sa pamilya sa Korea, Singapore at Taiwan. Visit Smart Padala PH on Facebook for more details. Promo runs from November 11, 2019 to January 15, 2020. Per DTI Fair Trade Permit number FPEP 18587, Series of 2019. Regulated by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
So again, that's the radio plug titled Kamsamnida, promoting the Smart Padala Padalibreng Bakasyon promo. So as you can hear, this 30-second plug made use of a short radio dramatic enactment instead of simply going ahead with the promo details. So the drama has like a lively music, and then it also involves dialogues that are conversational, and then music. And then we also have sound effects, which are components of a radio drama. So this mini radio drama helps listeners to relate to that feeling of suddenly being faced with the prospects of going to Korea after availing the Smart Padala service. The target audience for this are Smart Padala users and potentially non-users to encourage them to avail the service and the promo. In terms of the structure, we have the beginning, which introduced us to the characters. The girl who is actually named Joy in the script, who is availing the promo. The store vendor we also have, and then the narrator. It also sets the tone for the details to come. And then we have the middle, which presented the challenge, what does the girl have to do in order to get a chance to win an all-expense paid trip to Korea? And then for the ending, the narrator explains the promo details as well as the legal statements to prove that the promo is legitimate. And while the closing details are too in your face, this cannot be avoided as it is a legal requirement to state the DTI permit details and BSP regulations. I also have another plug, and this will be the last since the next reporter will also be presenting more samples of radio plugs. This one is titled Scammer and is broadcasting in DZUP 1602, the official AM radio station of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. This one takes a more development communication approach as compared to the first plug. So let's listen to this.
Hello?
Po na aksidente.
Huh?
Sugod siya sa ospital pero kailangan ng pera. Ipadala mo na lang sa bank account.
Bakit po sa bank account? Punta ko na lang po kayo. Sa hospital po ba?
Kasi...
Kaano-ano niyo po si Mama? Ano po bang pangalan ninyo? Manluloko. Scammer? Maaaring i-report ang ganitong insidente sa Philippine National Police sa hotline na 117. Isang paalala mula sa DZUP 1602, kasali ka.
So again, here we have another dramatic reenactment at the beginning to achieve relatability, especially since scam calls are a common occurrence. Having the listeners hear how these scam phone conversations take place gives it the realness, the relatability that it could also happen to them. Structure-wise, we have the beginning, which helps us envision the setting, which is the call between the girl and the scammer. The middle part is about the problem. What should we do when faced with scam calls? How do we deal with them? And as for the ending, the narrator gives us the details on how to report scam calls to the authorities. This 30-second plug, as I have mentioned prior, takes a more development communication approach as it educates households to be more discerning of scam calls and to take an active approach in curbing scammers with the help of law enforcement agencies, in particular the Philippine National Police. Before I end this report, I would like to leave you with two questions. So the two questions are, when do radio plugs or spots become important tools in development communication? And what could be a fatal mistake when producing a development communication-oriented radio plug or spot? Please share your thoughts by leaving a comment below the post. And then I would also like to leave you with the references should you wish to read them for more knowledge or information. Again, this has been Imari Vergara, your DEVC 206 classmate, and thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot.